Welcome back. So, in this very short vignette, I wanted to do one of my sort of philosophical interludes. And in this case, I want to complain again, complain about the pandemic, complain about my poor job of being an instructor or a teacher or a professor during the pandemic. And this particular vignette's entitled, Why Am I So Boring? So, the inspiration for this title comes from a strange book by a strange philosopher, Nietzsche, who, in his Ecce Homo, if you look on the right hand side, you'll see the table of contents. And I've always been just absolutely flabbergasted and amazed and intrigued by the titles of the chapters. Why I am so wise, why I am so clever, why I write such good books, why I am a destiny. And what I keep thinking to myself as I'm giving this course is, why am I so boring? And the reason is because, in many ways, is I think best embodied in this very nice quote, which maybe some of you have seen from the Feynman lectures. I love the preface to the Feynman lectures because Feynman wondered whether or not his experiment in the lectures on physics that he wrote had been a success or not. And what I would say is that over the long regard of 50, 60 years, the answer to that question is clearly yes. Now, I seem to have irritated some people by opining on the Feynman lectures in a Nature commentary on maybe the 50th anniversary, which was a book review. It was not a review about the course itself, it was a review about the book or the books. And I stand by everything that I said there, which is that over the long regard of time, these books have been a smashing success. But what Feynman was asking in his preface was whether or not the lecture room course was a success. And there, I would trust him and anyone else much more than my own opinion, which is that maybe the experiment didn't work that well. You can read on the right-hand side. But there was a quote from Gibbon that I thought was really meaningful. And it's in the middle of the page. It says, "The power of instruction is seldom of much efficacy, except in those happy dispositions where it is almost superfluous." So let's unpack that. It's basically saying that, in those cases where a teacher really makes a difference to somebody, in some sense, it's maybe those people that are already predisposed and have a love of learning and a passion for learning and an interest and curiosity about the world. But I guess my take is that, what are teachers supposed to do? For me, I don't view my role as being a conveyor of technical information. Maybe that's because I like to learn from books. I don't find learning from lectures to be particularly helpful, except for what I'm getting ready to tell you, which is as indicating to me, oh, that's something really interesting to think about. But ultimately, I need to quietly sit by myself and mull over things and make mistakes and get my factors of two. I'm just not fast enough to keep up with most Blackboard things. So at any rate, my hope is that in a real course, unlike this one, which seems to be focused on technical blah blah, in a real course, I would be standing in front of the class and I would be trying to actually get them to carry away two main things. One is the glory of the natural world, to revel in it, to not lose that childlike curiosity, and to not lose that delight in what we see in the world around us. And two, to marvel at the achievements of the human mind, whether it's by biologists or physicists or chemists or mathematicians, whoever, to have penetrated the darkness, to have learned things about the natural world which are rock solid. And and sorry, I'm going to be harsh here, despite the moronic nonsense spouted off by people in Washington, D.C. about, all facts are equally relative, and that we don't actually know things, and that science is just another belief system. No, sorry. You don't know what you're talking about, and you ought to be deprived of flying in airplanes and using GPS and cell phones, because that's based on actually knowing things. Anyway, so why the rant? It's just to say, for me, the terrible, terrible shortcoming of this course is that I am mainly focusing on technical blah blah and really missing out on the part that I care about more, which is not the technical blah blah. So, I've done lots of fun things. I can't tell you how much I love this particular thing, which I'm showing right here, which is chemical master equations. I love reasoning about probabilities. I think probabilities are the natural language of biology. And the cool thing is that one can write down time evolution equations that show us how to find how our probability distributions evolve in space and time, for example, or in time, and then we might actually investigate the steady state, and that can be very useful. And we did a whole series of vignettes on that. But as I said, to me, the thing that's really missing here is what I say here, which is somehow bowing to the majesty of the natural world around us. And here, I could have just as well have shown you things such as telescope images of galaxies or a breaking of a wave in the ocean or whatever. But I chose to look at a few examples from the natural world of biology. And in the top left is the Miliana Huxley eye, which is a very, very beautiful single-celled eukaryote that is photosynthetic. I happen to love their shells. In the upper right is this really weird spider that has these eyes that do all these weird things, and spinning of a web. The lower left is a blue whale, and the lower right is giant sequoias and redwoods. Like, what's not to marvel at? How does one, as one gets older, lose our attachment to these things, to feel the amazement? Because you see a little kid, and you take a little kid out to see a whale, and a boat pulls up alongside a blue whale, and I think most kids are just overwhelmed by that experience. And yet, as I've already pointed out, you fly over Greenland and everyone has their shades closed, which is to tell you that clearly somehow the act of quote unquote becoming an adult has deprived of us of that sense of not taking things for granted. So that was one thing. The other thing that I wanted to say is delight in the human mind confronting the void. And here I decided to show Emmy Noether. And the reason is because I love general principles that have broad reach. And, she was able to figure out a way of understanding the connection between symmetry on the one hand and conservation laws on the other. And you've seen, I've been using conservation laws over and over and over again, primarily accounting for mass balance, but we'll later talk about accounting for momentum balance, and that will lead us to notions like the stress tensor and partial differential equations for the mechanics of fluids or active matter or solids or whatever. And so behind the scenes is this amazing thing, which is the human mind penetrating the secrets of the universe. And that's the other thing that I feel like we shouldn't and must not take for granted. And so I thought I would just finish with a concrete example of the human mind on the loose and figuring out something so incredibly beautiful and profound. And it's important for you to think about this. It's easy to get, once again, to take things for granted. You take freshman physics and you learn about MGH as the potential energy of an object. Like, here's my my cell phone. I lift it up and it increases its potential energy. But this is really terrible. It's terrible because there's such a puzzlement. And here's the puzzlement. I'm saying that the interaction of my phone, the mass of my phone with the Earth, can be treated as though the entire mass of the Earth is concentrated at the center of the Earth. What the hell? How could that possibly be true? We remember that the force between objects gravitationally goes like the inverse square. So what that means is that the piece of mass just under my rear here on Earth attracts this phone much more strongly than does one at the other opposite diameter of the Earth. So they are not attracting it in the same way. And what I'm showing you here is from Newton's Principia. This is called one of the superb theorems. And the reason it's superb, and Newton had to invent the integral calculus to pull this off, was he was able to prove that despite the apparent impossibility of what I just said, which is we will pretend the whole mass of the Earth is concentrated at its center, as long as the mass is spherically symmetric, then, as he shows here, and he does it more generally, two spheres interacting with each other can be treated as 2-point masses with all their mass localized at the center. Why am I bringing this up? Because, as I said, what's missing in this course is a celebration of the wonder of nature and the wonder of the human mind penetrating nature. And here, for me, these superb theorems are indeed superb. I'm not the one who named them. They've been called that for a long time. But this superb theorem is so stunning, and it's so mathematically beautiful on the one hand, and it's so simple in terms of outcome at the other end of the sort of physics side of this, that one can do nothing but sort of shake your head in delight and glee at the power of the human mind to penetrate the mystery of the universe. So why am I so boring? I'm so boring because I'm just giving technical blah blah, and all I can hope is that that little bit of a nudge from me now and then to say, but hold on, don't take it for granted. It's so incredibly beautiful. Will inspire you to see the parts of this that are not revealed by my boringness. So that's what I wanted to say in this brief vignette.